What's up YouTube? Welcome to Cars, Costs, and Technology. Today I'm making a video about automatic transmissions and why is it that most car enthusiasts still hate them even in 2017. Throughout this video I'll be rolling some footage of my trip to Atlanta in February. If you want to check out that full video, I'll post it in the upper right hand corner. I had a lot of fun out there and there's a lot of cool supercars to see, so definitely check that video out. But what made me want to make this video about the automatic transmissions is I recently purchased a C7 Corvette 2016 model year with the 8-speed auto paddle shift transmission, and I love the car, but I've gotten some negative feedback both online and in person about going with that transmission option. So I wanted to just shed some light on why I went that route and what my thoughts are, as well as kind of help elaborate on some of the pros and cons of going with an automatic transmission. So we'll go ahead and start out with the negatives just to make sure you guys know I'm not being biased in this video. But number one is definitely going to be the impact on the driver experience. I think it goes without saying that when you go with an automatic transmission, you lose some of that kind of leverage and contact that you have with the engine by using the clutch. You also lose the the ability to really dictate your own shifting points precisely, at least with the manual transmission. And it kind of takes away some of the adrenaline of the drive. Depending on where you're driving at, there's nothing quite like the connection you have with a manual car. So I'm definitely willing to acknowledge that and point that out as a huge con, probably the biggest one for most people. Next is a power loss. Now, what I mean by this is, it's kind of commonly known that from the engine to the wheels, there's some power lost or horsepower lost in the drivetrain. There's some data that shows that it may be higher in an automatic transmission than it is in a manual transmission, just because there's more components and more pieces moving in there, so it ends up being more power loss. I think that it definitely makes sense, and it sounds like something that could be occurring. I don't know that it's happening in every automatic transmission, but it's definitely something to be aware of. I know in my C6 Corvette, I felt like the 4-speed automatic transmission just had a really off gearing ratio and kind of robbed that car of its power. It never really put it in the right RPM range to get the most out of that engine, so that's a factor as well. Number three is going to be the cost. Now, like we've already talked about, there are some other concerns, but when you couple those with the fact that you pay more to go with an automatic transmission, I think that's enough to steer most car enthusiasts away altogether, especially if you're the type that likes to work on your own car and you're more familiar with manual transmissions. Paying more for an automatic transmission as well as having a higher cost if anything were to break and less likely to be able to repair it yourself. I can certainly see where that would be discouraging for a diehard manual transmission fan and basically steer them away from it altogether. I will say that some of the more advanced supercars or hypercars, they don't even really give you an option of a manual anymore. So you can't really factor that a price difference just simply because there is no manual version to compare the cost with. So I do think that's unfortunate. I don't think that manufacturers should go ahead and decide what the end consumer is going to like. I think that both options should be available, but pricing is definitely a factor with the cars that do still have both options. Next, I want to talk about the weight. Now, I don't think this is as big of a concern, especially with, say, the C7 Corvette. I couldn't even find an exact weight difference between the manual and the automatic transmission, but it is worth noting that especially on older cars, an automatic has more components and parts to make it work, so naturally you're going to end up with a higher weight, which could impact the performance. So now that we've covered some of the negatives about going with the automatic transmission, I want to go ahead and move on to benefits and talk about some of the reasons why I made the decision to go with an automatic. And again, I'm not trying to encourage anyone else to do that. Just want to validate that decision, make sure people understand that it's a very valid and legitimate option. For me, the number one factor is going to be convenience. So I don't like to let my car sit in the garage until the weekends. I like to drive it every day, whether it's in traffic, whether it's in the rain. I know those aren't exactly ideal conditions for a Corvette, but for me, it's about having fun with the car. So I think having an automatic transmission on those day-to-day conditions, it's just very convenient and smooth. I know a manual would probably be just as much fun, but I'm sure everyone has experienced that annoying sitting in traffic with a manual transmission, wishing that you could just take your foot off the clutch and coast. So that's a huge factor for me. Number two is going to be consistency. Now, this is more regarding performance. When you look at performance data, whether it be track lap times or quarter mile times, even from the very top of the performance in terms of manufacturers like Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren, they've all come to realize that the consistency and the performance numbers are just better with an automatic transmission. They're able to fine-tune them so much better than they can make even the best drivers shift a manual transmission by themselves. Lamborghini stopped producing manual cars, I believe, in 2013. Ferrari was even sooner than that. McLaren doesn't have any models that have a manual transmission. So, it's pretty evident that they have come to realize they just cannot quite get the performance numbers that they need in relying on a manual transmission transmission. And, even in my Corvette, and a lot of the other models that do still have a manual version, you're either going to get the same or better performance data with an automatic than you are with a manual. So there's really no performance benefits to a manual necessarily. Next, I want to talk about the versatility of an automatic transmission, or at least the more modern ones like in my C7 Corvette. With a manual transmission, pretty much you get what you've got. You've got the transmission there. That's what you have to use, whether you like it or not. Where with an automatic, especially the current ones, they've got a few more tricks up their sleeve. You've got a bunch of different drive modes to adjust the shift points to kind of tailor to your liking. You also can use paddles to control them. So, if you do want to get some of the benefits of driving like a manual car, you can without having to worry about a clutch. So I think that's really awesome that you can kind of tailor how the car reacts and how you interact with it without having to have that a permanent setting. Next, I want to talk about the relevance and resale value. So this one's kind of the toughest to discuss just because nobody really wants to hear this, but it's basically the way it is right now, the shift we're seeing. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the hypercar and supercar manufacturers are not even giving an option for a manual transmission anymore. And typically technology from these, the top of the iceberg trickles down, and we see that in the more common sports cars and supercars. So, I don't know how much longer they'll be around or what the future holds for the manual transmission. It's easy to say that it's just exotics making this decision, but even the Dodge Demon that was just recently announced, rumors are saying that there's not going to be any type of manual transmission option for this car. So, we'll see how it goes, guys. But again, my goal is not to necessarily say the manual does not have a place anymore in the automotive world. I think it definitely does, but more or less to validate that the automatic is here for good. They're fine-tuned and better than ever. And I think that they deserve some more credibility. I think that at this point they've earned a high place or earned some respect within the automotive world. And I want to get your thoughts on it. I know some of you are really going to beat me up in the comments section and say manual all the way, but I definitely kind of challenge you to think about this and really give it more thought than just strictly what you've known in the past. But anyway, if you liked the video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Have a great day, guys.